Hello, YouTube. At the Russian St. Petersburg International seminar titled UFO and Paranormal Phenomena in Russia, held in November 1992, Valentin Psalomshikov, Russian scientist and journalist I often mention in some of my videos, met Nikolai Matveyevich Apanasenko, a resident of one of the villages of the Lugar district of the Leningrad region. In the recent past, he was the head of the radio club and a school mechanic. Now he was retired. He hoped to meet Lev Gindelis, a well-known specialist in astrophysics and communication with other civilizations, at that seminar. Gindelis, who was a tremendous scientist, he was not in the meeting room, and Psalomshikov asked what kind of issue the guest wanted to discuss with Gindelis. Having found out that Psalomshikov is a candidate of sciences and a consultant to the Terminator magazine, it was a cool publication, Nikolai Matveyevich, I will refer to him the Russian way, first name, paternal name, told a very interesting story to the scientist. During his school years, he was fond of amateur radio. He was a radio operator in the Soviet Army, and since there were not enough specialists in those years, he had to stay on in the armed forces for an extended term service. But one day he was seriously injured while installing a radio mast and returned to civilian life. Apanasenko got a job as the head of the radio club. He thought for a short time, but it turned out he stayed there until his retirement. Somewhere in the 1960s, the Soviet magazine Юный Техник, or Young Technician in English, came into his hands, so to say. He found it. And there was an article titled Mysterious Moon, which told about strange light flashes and moving objects on our natural satellite. It was also claimed that back in the 1920s, mysterious radio signals were received from the moon at the wave of 150,000 meters. This short line interested Apanasenko. As an amateur radio operator, he knew that the first radio communication sessions took place just on ultra-long waves, high power on which could be obtained even with the help of ordinary high-frequency machine generators. But already in the late 1920s, radio communication switched to medium and short waves, and ultra-long ones were almost forgotten. This means that no one else tried to receive signals from space at wavelength of tens and hundreds of kilometers. Since the manufacture of a receiving device with a wavelength of 150 kilometers was not a particularly difficult task, but a cumbersome task, Nikolai Matveyevich began to build a space reception station at home. The main problem was the large dimensions of the elements of the oscillatory circuit, which also had to be tunable in range. He wound an indicator of several thousand turns on a meter-long cardboard spool from a roll of paper, made two boxes with partitions made of aluminum plates for the tuning capacitor, one of which was pushed into the other using a screw jack. It was impossible to make an antenna for such a range, and an ordinary power grid acted as it. He also experimented with a broadcast network. Knowing the insidious jokes of the village power grid, meaning it was non-reliable, Apanasenko took out an old car battery for the purpose. He had to listen to the Lunar range in the evening and at night. There was less interference. It took a long time to mess with the amplifier and the network background, but when everything worked properly, Nikolai Matveyevich Apanasenko was amazed that the long-abandoned radio band was not empty at all. Most often, strange whistling sounds of a gradually decreasing tone were heard in the headphones. They appeared at any time of the day and year. The rarest were the bells, a sudden sound that resembled the hum of a heavy bell. Usually at night, a series of short beeps appeared periodically, similar to the operation of a teletype. They came in trains, meaning sequences of packages, sometimes for a few minutes and then suddenly disappeared. In winter, sounds like a pulsating low rumble were amplified, which could last for hours. Psalomshikov asked if he had ever heard something similar to human speech or music, but Nikolai Matveevich replied a negative. Although Psalomshikov did not expect anything else, the length of a radio wave of 150 kilometers corresponds to a frequency of 2 kilohertz, and it is almost impossible to modulate it with human speech or a piece of music. On the other hand, radio waves of this frequency with sufficient intensity can be heard as sound without any conversion. Among other signal phenomena, Nikolai Matveevich mentioned sounds that resemble dripping and irregular Morse code. Someone's transmission of encoded signals seems to burst into the headphones, but after a few seconds it faded, or rather changed the range. And only once by chance did he discover that if he quickly began to adjust the frequency, the signal could be picked up again. In the published article 505 from Nowhere in the NLO UFO magazine, number 49 for the year 2004 in Russia, it has already been reported that during the great perihelic opposition of Mars in the year 1924, attempts were made to receive radio transmissions from Mars at wavelength from 30 to 75 kilometers. Indeed, strange signals of various types were received, short sequences of dots and dashes, and a strange group of sounds. Some experts immediately rushed to announce that the source of the signals was outside the Earth. A little later, when the presence of an ionized layer in the atmosphere, heaviside layer, reflecting ultra-long and long waves was established, the extraterrestrial signals of 1924 were found to be erroneous. Since the ionosphere does not release ultra-long waves into space, it will not allow the same waves from the outside to reach the Earth's surface. A similar point of view existed until the 1960s, when it was found that ultra-long waves could be guided by the lines of force of the Earth's magnetic field. Moving along them, radio waves break through the ionosphere and go into space at distances of dozens of Earth radii. It is for this reason that the short click familiar to us all in the receiver from a close lightning discharge from a distant thunderstorm turns into a characteristic long whistle with a gradually decreasing tone. Geophysicists called such signals whistling radio atmospheric signal or spherics, and it was they who were most often received but by Nikolai Matveevich's equipment. But if super long waves can escape into space along the lines of force, the same signals from space can reach the Earth's surface through them. By the way, the lines of force of the magnetic fields of the Sun and Jupiter are closed to the Earth in the same way, so some strange signals may be the result of some solar processes, and possibly Jovian ones. At least radio astronomers have long recorded radio emission from Jupiter, including from thunderstorms there. Unfortunately, Nikolai Matveevich did not possess a tape recorder, and he did not record his signals. And then in the 1970s, he stopped regular observations of cosmic sounds. However, sometimes he still sat down by his old radio, put on the same old plastic headphones from which his ears began to ache after half an hour, and listened to the sounds coming from the outer space. And you know what? We still do not know what he heard exactly. I have no doubts that, specific military researchers worldwide do, but we, civilians, we do not. But I have another interesting phenomenon of voices to discuss. And this one has nothing to do with Psalomshikov, but everything to do, in a way, with the 1992 seminar in St. Petersburg. I found a fascinating but brief publication from 2012 in Russia, alas, in a somewhat obscure newspaper a while ago. The author was Yankovsky, who published, in translation, in the interesting newspaper The World of the Unknown, issue number 6, year 2012. Title, A Natural Roar from the Depth of the Earth. Geophysicist Belyaev, who made a report at the International Seminar UFOs and Paranormal Phenomena in Russia, which took place in 1992 in St. Petersburg, also told a curious story. In the 1960s, a deep well was drilled near Tashkent, that's in Uzbekistan, into which scientists lowered various sensors to study tectonic phenomena. One of the Moscow institutes was supposed to produce a special microphone for the recording infrasound vibrations, but for some reason did not deliver it on time, and the acoustic channel of the cable lowered into the well remained free. The young guy, scientist, who helped the scientists, for the sake of curiosity, lowered an ordinary piezo microphone into the well, the signal from which was sent to the sound amplifier. The effect was amazing. They heard sounds similar to a very low, growling male voice saying something unintelligible. The authorities were called. The heads of the research project listened to incomprehensible sounds and told to stop the outrage. However, the young guys managed to record the voice, but not on a tape recorder, but on a regular loop oscilloscope of this channel. Well, when this recording was viewed in Moscow on an acoustic spectrum analyzer, later it was reviewed there, experts reported that these sounds are of the natural origin. They only imitate the human voice. However, they didn't give back the film. There is no reason to doubt the plausibility of this story. The phenomenon of the voice of emptiness or the void has been recorded by other researchers. In the 1970s in the United States, during the modernization of sensors of the underwater acoustic security zone along the Atlantic coast, designed to detect Soviet nuclear submarines, strange underwater sounds similar to a human voice were also recorded. Well, you should read my book about Russia's USO secrets, or watch my videos about strange underwater phenomena. You and find out about the quackery sounds. Anyway, back to the United States. So that's what the Americans recorded. But the voice of the void is also described in the diary of Soviet cosmonaut Volkov. Unfortunately, so far, we have to settle for just the enumeration of cases of this phenomenon. One can only make fantastic hypotheses about its nature. So far, only one thing is known. It manifests itself in all terrestrial environments, underwater and underground, on the surface of the planet and in outer space. About the scientists who made that report, and I cited most of the Yankovsky article, but I did not put reference to Western cases. Valery Ivanovich Belyaev, who was born in 1931, he graduated from the physics department of Lomonosov Moscow University. He worked as a senior researcher at the Institute of Applied Geophysics of the USSR Academy of Sciences. Since 1962, he worked in the system of the Academy of Sciences of Ukraine and passed away in 1999. He was an outstanding scientist, oceanologist, professor, and academician. So if anybody knew the subject matter, it was him, and he spoke about it at the UFO seminar. Unlike some scientists I could name around the world who are afraid. Anyway, Isn't it sad that such information is virtually unknown in the world and research results fade away? I'm hoping that my effort at least keeps this afloat, and maybe one day somebody else in the civilian field will want to continue. That's what I wanted to let you know. I have much more in my video about strange sounds in outer space, recorded by Soviet cosmonauts or experienced actually by Soviet cosmonauts, the impact on the psyche, and even cosmonaut Volkov. You should see one of my earliest videos about him and his UFO encounter. Very interesting. And these people were as professional as can be, and I think much more intelligent than some of those who are trying to debunk them. So that's what I wanted to let you know today. If you like my research, I hope you do. Please help me through the links you will find in the description to this video. Please tell others about my channel. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you for your attention to my work.